Yeah, right.
It means the word economy.
Hey, Ohana Māori is the Reserve Bank of New Zealand.
Tēnā koutou kia toa. Welcome to this implementation committee meeting. Now, I need to declare at the front end, I can't chair this meeting until I've been given authority by the rest of the team. I need to tell you why. We understand about Brian, who's not here. He's an apology. Essentially, under our standing orders, the chair cannot chair a meeting on Zoom. And we know that Carmen is co-chair of the implementation committee, is on Zoom. So then the committee will need to resolve that if I'm to chair the meeting, someone move, someone second, I chair the meeting. So we formally pass that and then I can become the chair.
I'm seconding Carmen's motion that you chair it.
Okay, thank you very much.
I understand Carmen to have a motion saying that she would like Andrew to chair it, and I'm seconding it.
Okay.
Well done.
Thank you very much. Is there any discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Against, carry. Thanks, Carmen. And welcome to everybody on Zoom. We've got an apology from Brian, as I've just mentioned, so I'll move that apology be accepted.
And
seconded,
lateness for Alexa.
and lateness for Alexa, seconded by Gary. I'll put that motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Public forums, there's no request to address the committee in the public forum. So moving on to item 3, confirmation of the agenda. I'll move we confirm the agenda as presented or circulated, seconded by Michael Laws. Any discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Against, carried. Can everyone hear us on Zoom? You can hear us okay, Carmen?
Yeah, crystal clear, beautiful.
Okay, cool. Conflicts of interest. Members are reminded of the need to stand aside from decision making when a conflict arises between their role as an elected representative and any private or other external interest they might have. Anyone want to raise any matters under that item? Carmen.
Thank you. I'll be standing aside from 7.1 about river management and gravel extraction. I'll be fine for the rest of it though. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Carmen. It's noted. Okay, moving on to the item 5, confirmation of the minutes. Would someone like to move that the minutes of the 8th of December 2021 implementation committee meeting be approved as true and correct? Moved by Kate, seconded by Hillary. Any discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. Those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Item 6, actions. Just looking at them, I think they're either being progressed today or they're in hand. Has anyone got any views to the contrary? Not. If not, we will move on to item 7.1, which is river management update, quarters 1 and 2.
Sorry.
Hillary.
Sorry about those actions. When it says like in progress and then details will be reported to the 9th March meeting.
Yep.
Does that mean it's now finished except that it's come to us today?
Correct.
They're not finished.
Yeah, that's popped up. That's popped up in several of those actions taken. Whether they're not finished, I suppose that the action to this point has been brought to this committee today. Who knows what the action is after this? Does that make sense?
Well, except if it's a request for a report and the report is coming to the meeting today, then the action is done if it's brought to the meeting today, I presume.
Oh, I see what you mean. So yes, okay. So the next meeting,
they'll disappear because
they'll disappear.
Yeah.
Correct. Sorry, I misunderstood.
Will be marked as complete.
And
Still be there for one more detail.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Sorry.
Lord,
It says the floor is not accessible anyway.
Oh, it's because.
Lunchtime. It's over lunchtime, not.
1 to 2, yeah.
Yeah.
She'll figure it out.
Sorry.
Sorry.
No. It's important.
Sorry.
It's important that if Alexa is stranded in the lifts without access, that we deal with that. So I think Amanda's got everything under control.
Oh, within the next couple of hours anyway.
Yeah. You might find she's working for the Inland Revenue by the end.
Okay.
That's the
Can
only
we-
floor she could access.
We have a little bit of order. Okay, moving on to item 7.1, river management update, quarters 1 and 2. This report provides a quarterly summary of the river management operational activities with Michelle Mifflin, Manager of Engineering, and Pam Wilson, Team Leader of Infrastructure, will present via Zoom to respond to questions on the report. Hey, just a wee bit of a heads up there. This is the first, certainly in this triennium, of this type of full report about river management. It has a lot of info, and it crystallises a lot of the discussions, I think, certainly some that I've sat in and some other councillors have sat in with staff, and also times where we've been out in the community as well, where we've met with adjacent landowners of rivers and streams, etc., where there've been questions raised, for example. So really appreciate having this brought to us. I just need to note a couple of things. One is the extensive list of attachments. Obviously the 2 quarterly reports for the 6 months, the total of the 6 months of the 21 end of the 21 year. So from 1 July through to 31st of December. We've got the Kakanui River morphology. We've also got 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, all the rivers listed there, morphology and riparian management strategy for all of those particular rivers. And also for our information, we've got extracts from the Soil Conservation and Rivers Control Act. So we've got a lot of info. I think there's 570 odd pages there. So we really appreciate being brought up to speed around what these, how these rivers are managed and the influence of strategies, etc. So I'll now hand over to Michelle. You're with us, Michelle, and Pam. Can't hear you, Michelle.
Yeah, so thank you, Chair Noon. We also have our General Manager, Dr. Gavin Palmer, and also Natural Hazards Manager, Dr. Jean-Luc Payon, who will be supporting us in this paper. What I'd like to do firstly is declare there are three errors. These errors are on page 15 of the council paper, and this, paragraph 15, there is a timeline that actually has incorrect months. That should really read October, November, December, Jan, Feb, March, April, May. The timeline is correct with the references above and below it. This timeline is also incorrectly reflected in the quarterly reports in section 9. I do apologise for that, and I'm accountable for that because I created that timeline. There's also
thanks, Michelle. I'll just check with Liz to make sure that we've got that covered off. You understand what?
Yes.
Yep. All good. No, thanks, Michelle.
Okay, and there's just one more error on paragraph 70 of the council paper. There is a reference that should read to clause 34, not clause 41 or whatever it is. It refers to paragraph 41. That should indeed read paragraph 34. Again, apologies around that.
Thank you.
Okay, so thank you for this opportunity to bring this noting paper to council. It has been eagerly anticipated from our team. What I would like to do is I will take the paper as read. However, I will very quickly go through the principles of the paper. The purpose of it was to provide the quarterly summary of river management operational activities and also to update on the 3 resolutions that were made at an implementation committee on 8th of September. As Chair Noon has prefaced, this particular paper is quite heavy on the front end of background and which includes details of where we carry out our activities, some legislation reference, and also reference to river management strategies. We just felt for this particular paper, being our first time coming to council to talk about river management activities, it would be useful contextually to understand some of the basis of river management. We then move into some really good discussion around our river management reporting, particularly the principles and what we've been working on with our performance measures and how we've been reporting that. There's been a lot of really good work in this space under this long-term plan by Ms. Wilson's team. We then move into the update on the the committee resolutions, and those 3 resolutions actually go into detail on the progress of the resolutions, including reference to the quarterly updates where relevant. We do actually have a little bit more information. So I guess I would open it to the council if there are questions, and perhaps direct us with questions. I'll just close the window.
Oh, just in a sec. Awesome. Michael. Microphone.
Sorry?
Microphone.
Is it on? Thank you. I wonder, it's Michael Laws here. I wonder if you could take me through something that keeps recurring in this report, and it's the concept of global consents. You have a global consent, as I understand engineering, which allows you to do stuff. And I'm looking particularly at section 13 of the report on page 14. And I wonder if you have reviewed global consents. It also doesn't authorize you, I note, to the extraction of gravel. Does it authorize you to take stuff out of the river that shouldn't be there?
Thank you, Councillor Laws, for that question. A good question, and in short order, I will firstly just answer the question around global consent. Paragraph 13 of the council paper is quite important to understand the concept around global consent. There isn't a global consent that allows us to do a bunch of stuff in rivers. The global consent consists of those 3 particular resource consents, and they operate together in some occasions where activities are being taken. In the second question, so on the global consent, it is a term that's used, but there are 3 resource consents. I think there has been particularly often a misunderstanding that we have a global consent that does a whole bunch of stuff, but it isn't. We actually carry out works individually under those 3 consents. In regards to your second question around, do those consents allow us to take stuff out of the rivers? I would suggest that under the Soil Conservation Act and in our powers and responsibilities with river management, we can remove material.
Right. So I
So
guess that would mean, would that be the resource management land use consent to disturb the beds of various watercourses throughout the Otago region? Would it be under that one?
yes, and also it's worth pointing out that we use those consents to remove river obstructions, which can be
Yeah.
debris or trees or blockages. So that's typically where it's at.
Thank you.
Michelle, can I just ask then, when you work through a challenge such as Michael's referred to, do you have to take into consideration, the natural environment, and various other statutory requirements under the MPS, FM, etc. So does that all come into play as well?
Mr. Chair, if I could just answer the question, I think if you're interested in what's in scope, the best way to answer that is for us to provide you with a copy of the consent so you can see what the conditions are and what they actually authorise. I think that's the answer to the question.
Awesome. Thank you. Kevin, then Kate.
Look, just a comment on that one, though. That was paragraph 14, but on paragraph, I think 64 on 24 says gravel extraction for hazard mitigation has been included. So we're not actually saying we're not going to take gravel, because in 64, you're actually gravel extraction for hazard mitigation has been included in the current consent application. So it'd still be possible to take gravel out if it is in fact a hazard mitigation purpose. Is that the intent of that?
Yes, yes, Councillor Brown. What we have done as an interim measure, as we examine a greater gravel management strategy across Otago, is to include gravel extraction in our renewal of our global consents, which does allow us to address areas where there are hazard mitigation issues, which are flooding and causing flooding, or having imminent effect to structures or communities.
Thank you.
Cool. Kate.
Really interesting report, and thank you for all the work and care that's gone into it. I've got a few questions, but I just want to go to the resolutions first. You've asked us to note these reports that came to the council or were created in 2016 and 18. Have they never been before council before?
Yeah, they have.
I can answer that question. Yes, they have. Sorry, Councillor Wilson, you're referring to the strategies?
Yeah.
Yep, definitely.
Yes. Okay.
Each of those and all of them came to council and resulted in express resolutions of council to adopt them.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to sound frustrated here. I'm sorry. So in the 2000 and the Pomahaka and the Tairi at least, there are clauses in both of those saying that one of the actions that we will take is look at a global consent for gravel extraction so that people can use the gravel. I don't want to note those reports today, knowing that actually we haven't done that, or I don't think we've done that, and we've just gone out for another global consent despite that, and we're going to review these strategies. I just think that that's adding a frustration. So, or have I got it wrong? What I understand the process now is that we're going to review all of these strategies again before we do any actions out of the current strategies. Is that correct?
I can start answering that, Kate. No, you have read the strategies in the paper correctly. I can only speak in the present.
Oh, absolutely.
Here on,
Yeah.
But look, what I can say is in the last 12 to 18 months, there has been a stock take of all strategies within ORC. The river management forms a part of those strategies. And when I mentioned that we're reviewing these strategies, engineering and natural hazards have a part to play in that process of reviewing them. It does involve other functions within ORC to assist in this process. But the first steps we are taking is certainly addressing the references to gravel extraction. I believe it's an interim step. I have spoken publicly in community sessions around looking at a gravel management strategy, which takes time because it involves our policies. and it also involves other teams, including consents and policy. But what we can do as we examine what a gravel management strategy will look like for the Otago Regional Council is take the interim step of, while we're reviewing our current global consent and renewing it, to include the ability to address issues across Otago. With the strategies, I do want to draw attention to that a strategy remains fairly static in its principles. And there are operational actions in those strategies. This is where engineering is focusing on building under its asset management plan, operational river management plans and actions that become the more operational delivery of those strategies, as opposed to being embedded in them. I hope that helps.
Yeah, no, look, and I'm just the timing, and I think I'm just wanting to channel the concerns that I've had expressed to me. People understand those strategies are there. They're probably slightly concerned there hasn't been the action that they thought would happen since 2016 on them for those global consents. I don't know, noting them today would add to their frustration when, because we're actually, and I totally get that with Te Mana Atawai, we have to go down a very different process anyway. But I don't know, noting them today adds to that at all. But anyway, I read this in order that it was written. This is a totally different question now. And when it came to figure 7 on page 19, I totally understand that we adopted this in the infrastructure strategy, but I put the words ICM in, integrated catchment management, because that seems to be the thing that's missing in that hierarchy. And it's not until I think paragraph 71 or something we start talking about that, as you pointed out earlier, or that we talk about integrated catchment management. And again, talking about silos, because I don't want this to be a siloed approach, and I'm sure it isn't, but how does the integrated catchment management stuff work in this, that we've got catchment groups doing some fantastic stuff that can work in with, whether it be tree control or whatever?
I can start that. Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Figure 7 really does draw from our infrastructure strategy.
Yeah.
We certainly haven't been taking a silo approach. The reason it probably doesn't include reference to integrated catchment management or catchment action plans is because that really sits at the strategic direction level of that pyramid. This really focused on engineering's, I guess, responsibility around that. We do touch on it in those paragraphs that you mentioned. And again, this is a space that's evolving. Of course, we will have our program of works and our activities in those action plans as well. I guess really this has just been taken from our infrastructure strategy to focus on where the tactical and strategic documents that relate to river management sit. But it wasn't by design to exclude integrated catchment management.
Fantastic. And last question, if I may. Look, just paragraph. There were some statements put in here that I thought were rather strong, and one is paragraph 53, and I may have it wrong, where you talk about the gravel in the riverbed through natural processes will try to re-establish the same grade, and you talk about bank erosion and will be bank erosion. I thought that that was a strong statement depending on site-specific stuff, and that it may try to re-establish the same grade, because it really depends on what the function of the effect of a flood may be and what gravels it's moved, or what a digger may do. Depends on what will or may happen. Does that make sense?
Yes, I can answer that. My apologies if that reads as a really strong statement, Councillor Wilson. I guess I was really just trying to reiterate when we're looking at gravel extraction or any activities, I guess, in the river, we really need to give mind to how a river is going to behave, and it will, in essence, try to correct itself. I guess that statement was based around where we have experienced some commercial activities, some that have often just focused on one area of the river. To me, a gravel management strategy really considers that whole of river health.
Yep.
And that's that balance where I was trying to suggest, that's all.
Fantastic, thank you.
Hilary.
I'd like to say that this is just such a beautiful, comprehensive report. It's got that, it's like a Persian carpet, even with the tiny little mistake in it, just to prove that it's as beautiful as it ought to be. And all that you should have done is suggested that if we can't find the mistake, we just weren't reading our papers properly. What I would like to say is, would you mind if, since we obviously haven't got, would you mind, since we obviously haven't got enough time today to do this paper justice, if we just forwarded through to you if we had some questions, you know, just about, because there's all sorts of intriguing things in it, and it's a long paper, and if we could just, not complex things, but just to understand a bit more, do you mind if we send things through to you?
Yeah, Dr. Palmer, have you got your hand up to comment to that, or was that?
Oh, through you, Mr. Chair, I had a couple of comments to make on respect to two previous questions, if I may. But yes, look, I'm very happy to respond to any questions that you have on this paper. So probably send them through to the Chief Executive or myself in the first instance, and we will ensure that they're answered.
Excellent.
Thanks, Gavin. Did you want to comment on any of the other matters that have been discussed, Gavin?
Yes, please, if I may, Mr. Chair. Just coming back to
Yes.
Councillor Wilson's question to do with integrated catchment management, which is a really good question. The way I would interpret Figure 7, the pyramid, is that this pyramid is a block that fits into the overarching ICM framework. And you may recall that we workshopped with you the ICM framework. Ms. Ferguson put up a diagram that showed it was a bit like an organisation chart. It had a number of blocks down the bottom, and one of those blocks was actually river management strategies, and was in effect this pyramid, which is Figure 7, in the same way that we'll have similar pyramids to do with biodiversity and other things. And when we come back to you in a couple of months' time with the ICM framework, we'll make sure that how this river management stuff fits into that is explained to you. The second comment I want to make is that there's quite a bit of attention paid to gravel extraction as if it's the only way of dealing with a gravel issue. In fact, the preferred way of dealing with a gravel issue is to leave the gravel in the system and to move it around in such a way that it deals with the localised problem. So therefore, and that explains one of the reasons why we don't actually have a gravel extraction consent, because we don't really need it in most of the time, because our preferred response is to undertake minor diversions and the like, which are allowed by those suite of consents we already hold, and to keep the gravel in the system, because the gravel bar that's there today is the supply to the next, bend down the river. Having said that, we acknowledge that gravel extraction is a tool. It's appropriate in some circumstances, which is why we want to incorporate it into our global consent applications.
Thanks, Kevin. Can I just follow up a question that was raised before by Kate about funding line items that appeared in the strategies when they were developed in 2016, 2018, and we've heard from Michelle about the principles pretty much stay the same in those strategies, and I'm just wondering, because we've now locked in our long-term plan, those numbers, actual numbers now in the office will look quite different to what was actually published in those documents 2016, 2018. Am I on the right track?
Yes, I can start that. Yes, you you would be correct. That there would be updates on that. There are numbers, and certainly the environmental framework and lens has changed as well. The operational activities have clearly been undertaken, and as I mentioned earlier, that's the reason for having them out of the strategies and into our river management plans that sit under our asset management plan.
Thank you. Kevin.
You probably just a couple of points on that, and I'll just go back to that gravel extraction part. And I understand, Ian, thanks for that explanation, Dr. Palmer. But when we look at the three I'm quite familiar and read again, the Shag, the Kakanui, and the Waianakarua, part of the functions set out there is part of the river management is actually to enable sustainable gravel extraction. So, you know, that somewhere along the line that needs to either be worked with the community that, yes, we still need that or we don't need that. So I presume that will be part of a review of these documents.
If I could comment, yes, and that's always been the case. In fact, the thing that caused us to initiate the program of strategies and to start with the Kakanui one was a commercial operator wanting to take gravel. And what we were wanting to do is to give them more certainty about the places where that is sustainable and more certainty about the places where we should be encouraging them to move away, accepting that the strategies are not legislative tools, that the consent process makes the actual decision. So it's always been the case that gravel extraction by commercial operators can play an important role in river management, and the strategies guide us to the parts of the river and the quantities that might be feasible for a consent application.
Thanks very much, Dr. And just one follow-up, and this might actually require a sit-down and an explanation sometime. So if you want to head down this track, either yourself or Ms. Mifflin, that I'm happy. But going back to page, I think it's page 15. So, and this is about the natural process and modified rivers. So we've got a river that is highly modified. It could have a dam on it, and that's a common one. You know, I think of the Waitaki dams. So how do we determine what is the natural process of that highly modified river, and when do we look at that natural process and sort of preventing a natural process to protect the modified state? So yeah, where's the balance between those two? And I could talk to Dr. Palmer a lot about what people say about the modifications on the Waitaki, but yeah, so where is that balance? How do we achieve that balance? And I would be happy to take that offline to talk, but others may be interested in that point.
Thanks, Councillor Malcolm. I can make a few comments on that, and Dr. Palmer may wish to comment. This is a very good question, and it's certainly one that regional councils face across New Zealand, is finding that balance around modified rivers, whether it's through dams or flood banks or having communities living beside them or infrastructure crossing over them, and finding that natural state that is the health of the river. I guess from our perspective, as we do things now, it is balancing that assessment of environmental considerations first, certainly people and property safety and things like that. So I think what I'm looking forward to as we develop these river management plans is showing how these principles, certainly in this environmental environment, can be applied, which will help guide community expectations and understanding what we do to balance between those modified environments and river natural processes. I think this takes a holistic approach, which includes many of my colleagues across Otago Regional Council in various functions, and I think it's a really exciting piece of work over the next year or so to look at. But happy to come back as well in a separate forum if Dr. Palmer feels that's useful.
Look, I'm happy with it, really happy with that explanation, and we'll watch that as we go through. And to me, that's probably one of the real key balances that we have to get, that we have to evolve over the next period. So thanks very much for that explanation.
Excellent, thank you, Kate.
Sorry, I thought I'd had my last, but I'm just looking at the map on page 12. And the more I look at that, I'm wondering if, in the context, and going back to my question about integrated catchment management, we should actually be considering for the next long-term plan having not river management zones based on what I think is done here, this district council that you're in, but in the catchments. Is that, am I reading that right? That at the moment, M1, the river management one, is Dunedin City, and that includes Strathtyre, which is part of the Tyre River, and also Leith. Is that how it works?
Yes, Councillor Wilson. That map actually shows the current structure of the river management zones and the river management rating and budget areas. So we predominantly carry out our activities across those zones, which is also in that table early on, which is after figure 2. So that's how river management is currently structured, but that's not to say that it may change in the future, but logistically it sort of works well with that district and catchment rivers at the moment.
Well, and I can totally understand. I think Queenstown's the only one that is split up, and that is sort of in a But as a question for another, I don't know, maybe it's for finance. But as we go into integrated catchment management, where you've got catchment groups actively doing different jobs and maybe coming to us, I suppose that raises a question for all of us around the table as a political decision, whether we should be at some stage considering a different rating unit model. Does that make sense to? Yeah. And that's really hard for you guys if we don't give you that direction.
I think this is a valid question, and concur with Councillor Wilson that as we move through ICM, looking at whether we adjust our river management districts to be more based around FMUs. You know, for example, we've spent quite a lot of river management effort in Middlemarch, and yet we only rate Middlemarch $1,000 or $2,000 per year for river management, because most of it comes from Dunedin City, because it's bundled with M1. So these are valid things to work through as we work up the ICM stuff.
Well, and the reason for that is actually Dunedin probably needs some of its money working through catchment groups, looking at some of the river issues they've got themselves, and that should be something we should be looking at. I will throw that to finance chairs.
Okay, Kevin, then Gary.
So going on to page 26, which is summary of river management year planning and reporting cycles, and item J about just some of your constrictions around other restrictions. COVID-19 has since 2020 introduced an unprecedented set of challenges. I'm just probably a couple of things, Dr. Palmer, is are you confident that we're actually COVID prepared for a major flood event? And that's basically it really. So we have a major event now. You're quite comfortable that we have a strategy in place with the COVID life we live at the moment?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, I am. A lot of effort's gone into, in our organisation, identifying how we will function from a business continuity point of view, identifying critical functions and services, We've identified the flood warning service and the engineering function as being critical services. And this goes right back to the very start of COVID, right from the very start, looking at how we will respond to a flood in a COVID environment, looking at how we maintain critical infrastructure under, on a sunny day under COVID. And so Dr. Payan and Ms. Mifflin and their teams have put a lot of effort into that planning, how you work remotely, how you keep staff safe. And then that's broadened out to how as a sector, we would work together to share resources. And of course, that's unfortunately been tested a number of times with real floods during the COVID setting. So there's always a risk there, but I'm satisfied there's been a lot of detailed planning go into this and it's been tested.
Thanks, Dr. Palmer. Very much appreciated.
Thank you, Gary.
I was just going to say thanks very much to the staff for a comprehensive report and to move the 3 recommendations.
Seconded.
Thanks, Gary. Thanks, Michael. And can we just note that further questions of clarification, staff are happy to receive those through the CE and Dr. Palmer. Okay. Gretchen,
Just want to comment if that's all right.
Oh.
Once it, yeah.
Yep, so
sorry.
it's been moved and seconded. Speakers for the motion, Gretchen.
Yeah, I was just wanting to say, yeah, that what Kate talked about and you talked about, Dr. Palmer, in terms of the pyramid and how it fits within ICM. I've always felt really proud of how our council has put together these river management plans. I feel that they were ahead of their time in a way when we started doing them, and that was down to your vision at that time, Dr. Palmer. It was integrated catchment management, essentially, in that we got together with community. We talked about their aspirations for their river. We talked about the natural environment and what it does. We shared knowledge. We drew up a joint plan, taking into account, obviously, legislative responsibilities we have, but also the community and what they want to see for their rivers. We used all the tools in our toolbox, including GIS, for a number of years to visually portray what would happen as a result of some of the actions, and we modelled as well, and we have a lot of data which could go into it. So I think, yeah, the confusion around whether this is integrated catchment management or whether it's just a block within it is a debate, but really this is integrated catchment management. It sets us up really well as a model as well that we can build on. Much wider than just the river management. Good point as well, Kate brought up about what are the units that we should be working within going forward, but no doubt you've thought about that as well in your team. But yeah, I just wanted to note that I think we've done really well as a council. The implementation of this is always the hard bit, isn't it? But man, we've done a really good job on this planning. Well done.
Yeah. Thanks, Gretchen. Hilary, then Michael Deaker.
I'm not sure whether that resolution included, but I was sort of hearing the corners of it. A big thank you to the staff for the actual report that came through. I mean, we've been sort of saying that, but I was wondering whether the resolution did actually capture that. And if somebody would like to, I'd like that to be in there, just saying for the mover and seconder. What I particularly appreciate about the report, which might give staff pause for thought, is that it's well enough written so as we understand it well enough to ask questions. Sometimes we can be a bit confused and therefore we can't get to the bottom of what's going on because the report doesn't give us the information. And unfortunately for staff, we can understand this very well, so we are asking questions and things, and that is a sign of a really good report to me. So really, I just want to comment on how not only thorough it is, but how it allows you to understand what it is you still need to know. Really good work, guys.
Thanks for that, Hilary. And because it's a new reporting regime, essentially, you make a good point, and I sense Gary is happy to incorporate something along the lines that we note the report and we pass on the committee's appreciation for the new reporting regime.
Yes, nice.
Would you be happy with that?
Yep.
Michael Laws, happy with that? Yes. Michael Dicker.
Yeah, I'm just going to be reminisce for a moment about a day when we had been meeting at Waitaki District Council, and as a council we went down with Gavin, I'm pretty sure, to look at the Kakanui and the Koru and look at gravel management issues there, and met with a number of landowners, landholders on both of those rivers to talk about their issues and how they saw where council management of those two rivers was going, and how appreciative they were that in the process of developing the management plans for the Kakanui and the Koru, there had been a lot of consultation, and that local views had been taken on board, including about gravel management, including about the philosophy of let the river be the river, rather than try to constrain it or channel it or bank it or whatever else. And I came away from that feeling pretty good about the way our staff then, I think it's before Michelle Mifflin's time, had produced that plan and were implementing it. So I'm totally in support of what Gretchen said and of what the motion says. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Kate.
I agree with generally what people have said, but I'm going to sound slightly frustrated for the people that I hear from who've expected action since 2016 on some of these things and thought it was happening. And so I'm not going to say it's great that we have a strategy and then not have an implementation plan. And what will frustrate people now is that, and absolutely understandably, and I totally get why we need to do a review with Te Mana Atawai and some other thinking, is that that there may be some ongoing work to be done in that space. What I think we're at a point, and I really love this report, so I don't want to sound negative about that. I think it's a fantastic report, but I think there's some other challenges ahead of us as we start looking at integrated catchment management. And we have got community groups out all over these rivers trying to do what is good. It is damned hard to know what is good. And as someone who has suffered from having ORC twice come in and dig up my own riparian plantings, and I know that happens elsewhere, is because we never do anything proactively before communities go out and do that. We say, go and plant whatever you like, but actually if you make a flood thing, we'll go and fix it. But we don't have something that talks about integrated management, that we will set the scene up to do a really good job. And that may require getting a digger in before you do your plantings. And those sort of things are stuff that I'm really looking forward to incorporating into that review and that other thinking. But also, I think we need to emphasize what we're doing here is not just trying to manage the river for humans, but us working out how the river can best work for itself. And that, I think, hasn't been, is what Te Mana Atawai will bring. But sometimes we speed up rivers rather than slowing them down. We expect the people at the end of the river to take everything as quickly as possible because the people up on the hills don't want it. And actually, we don't have that whole of river feeling. So go on, do the review as quickly as possible. But please work with those communities who've been waiting some time, who've got really, really substantial problems with gravel build-ups that actually are often the effects of plantings or other things that have got other flood and river management issues that have been ad hoc and have caused other problems. Thank you.
Okay, are there any further speakers? But before I go back to Gary, I just want to check in with Michelle, because I think you have something just to clarify.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Noon. Thank you, Councillor Wilson. I think that was a really good comment that you made. The engineering team, certainly Ms Wilson's team and our staff that are involved in river management, we are very cognizant of the work that needs to occur. And that also, I guess, that future thinking, certainly with ORC's move to have integrated catchment management, I think really is going to help bridge a lot of those concerns and areas you've got, so that we're not just seen as a team out there doing things in a river that take away riparian plantings. So look, we do acknowledge there's a lot of work. Certainly in the last 18 months, we've been building and preparing our structure of the engineering team to be able to respond to this and equip ourselves to move with our future strategic direction. So that's all I'd like to add. We are aware of this.
Thank you very much, Michelle. Are there no further speakers? If not, I just want to make a brief comment. That thanks from the committee, please extend it. I know Pam is with us, Pam Wilson and John Luke, and they have their own particular roles. Pam, the long-term planning, etc. So there's a real team effort going on here. So that expression of thanks is to be spread as far and as wide as it needs to, and I'll leave that in your hands, Gavin and Michelle. I will put the three motions all together. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? That was just a noting. It was just, with regards to the further questions. Are those against? Carried. Thank you very much, everybody. Moving on to item 7.2. This is the Environmental Implementation Quarterly Update. This report provides a summary of the quarterly operational implementation activities undertaken in the areas of freshwater, biosecurity and biodiversity. We've got Andrea Howard, I believe, online. We've got Gavin with us as well, and Sarah. And essentially this report is for noting. It notes the range of implementation activities being undertaken to maintain and improve ORC's delivery of environmental implementation activities. At a quick glance, there's 25 odd projects in the Jobs for Nature space with $53 million tagged to them. So there's a hell of a lot going on. Andrea, welcome. Would you like to introduce your report with any particular comments?
Thank you through the chair. No, I'll just assume that people have read it and happy to take questions.
Excellent. Thank you. Questions, queries? Michael, Beaker, and then Alexa.
Yeah, hi, Andrea. I was impressed with figure 1, your map showing implementation activities. And I wondered whether it might be worth thinking about that where the Eco Fund has made a significant contribution to an implementation activity, which it does, that those should be included on your map as well.
Through the chair, yes, that's a great idea. We've actually just got a version 2 of that, working on that this morning, but didn't obviously have it in time for the report. So that will capture the Eco Fund, but also the boundaries of all of these projects. So at the moment, they're just one dot on a map, but we're aiming to kind of show in a more spatial way the reach of each of these individual projects. And we possibly won't have captured all of them either. So, but no, that's a good idea, and we will do that.
Thanks, Andrea.
Thank you. Alexa, then Hillary.
Kia ora, Andrea, and thank you for a marvellous report. There's just so much going on. It's great, and it's really good to see it with the climate action plan framework around it to see how it relates. What is concerning me, I'm wondering if you're thinking about this, is the Jobs for Nature Fund, and the table doesn't tell us how long those funding positions are in place for. Are we thinking about how we don't lose this good work when that funding runs out?
Through the chair, yes, that's a great question. It's come up through the Mana meeting, and we've had some discussions already with Puketaraki Runaka regarding the Te Haka Pupu project, and I was talking to our project manager this morning about the project, this particular one having a transition plan, but it's definitely something that we need to think about from a strategic perspective. Not sure whether
I really think for every one of these projects, we need to start thinking, once that good work's done, we know that we can go backwards and lose all the benefit if we haven't figured out the next part of it. And so many of them, by design, are aligned with the things that with our work anyway. So I really think we need to start seriously thinking about how we're going to fund in 3 years' time. I think most of them are 3 years, or it'll be 2 years now. Some are 4 though.
Can I just make a brief comment? This popped up a number of months ago when we discussed the Otago climate change assessment or emission greenhouse gas emission inventory, and I was tasked with writing a letter to the ministers on exactly that topic, and the letters went away relatively recently, one to Minister Parker, Minister for the Environment, and also one to Minister O'Connor, Minister for Biosecurity, on exactly that topic, making sure that all the great gains that are made through these Drive for Nature funding regimes that are in play, that we don't lose those gains when that money runs out. So
We might need to keep the opposition and both oppositions and in the loop too.
okay, thank you. Hillary, then Kate. Oh yes, and I'll go in a sec. Yes, thank you.
Just a question about Wallabies. What we seem to have under 16, little number 16, don't know what page, here is that we're having a jolly good look in a variety of ways for Wallabies, and we've killed one. Is there any more of the story than that I'm missing? Doesn't sort of say whether we're finding them or, I mean, it just appears to have a variety of descriptions about how we're looking for them. And we've managed clearly to find one because there's a dead one. Well, we mightn't have found that. We might have just found it dead. I don't know. Anyway, is there more to the story that we don't quite know?
Through the chair, so we're in the fortunate position of it being an exclusion pest, so in very low numbers. So at the moment, our focus is on surveillance. If we see wallabies, we have the contractors in place that can cite from a surveillance program perspective, and therefore have the tools to destroy that wallaby as well. So, and then we have other occurrences where, for example, the one that was killed by the landowner. We supplemented that with immediate surveillance after that sighting. So the answer really is that we're in that fortunate position to have very low numbers. So it's a matter of mixing a proactive surveillance approach with a reactive sighting program in place, and we're much more resourced now to be able to respond to those sightings with more than just the officer level, but with the contractors with all of the different types of tools to seek and destroy.
So have we seen any other than the one that the landowner killed?
My understanding that we have not.
Right. Thank you.
No, on that particular matter. Okay, sorry.
Yeah,
sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry,
yeah.
Kevin.
Can I jump in there?
Absolutely. Yes, jump. Sorry.
Yeah. It's an exceptionally good outcome that, in fact, only one wallaby has been shot in our area. If you look at how we have zoned, how it is zoned, there's containment areas in from South Canterbury North, and they're about containing wallabies in those areas. Ours is about complete eradication. I think, Andrew, correct me, I think some 62,000 hectares have been covered since this program has taken afoot. The reports I'm getting from farmers on the ground, and when I come in contact in those areas that have been surveilled, they really believe that the crews are doing an exceptionally good job with their thermal gear. They've now got drones with thermal imaging on it. The dogs are trained dogs, so they really do believe. I think we've just found some sign I'd have to read that report again. I think we might have found some sign somewhere, and again, they're going back into those areas where they've found sign to check and trace. So we are, yeah, I think that there's a heck of a lot of work being done with no result. So that's actually very good. Which, yes, so and we're funded for the next 3-4 years. So I think that's really quite powerful. And within talking to my Peter Scott from ECAN, they are just again working very hard on that containment process, and the farming community I'm regularly in contact with around that South Canterbury boundary up the Hekataramira and the likes are really pushing hard to keep them up that way. So
I take it we're looking for sightings. Sorry, I take it we're actually looking for anybody who's seen them.
That's a question for Andrea.
Well, it's a sort of a question going along. If nobody's seen any, are we saying to people?
It's actually a big signpost up in the Lindis. I think the Lindis is one, Andrea. We've got a signpost up there that if you see a Wallaby, contact us. And there's other, in fact, I put an article in the Omru Mail last weekend that I've had people ring me about just on a general comment that I did in there. And there, everyone seems to be looking and being vigilant. So the more signs we have out, the better, I suppose. But the work needs to keep going. But every day we don't see one's a better day, really. But we've got to keep at it.
Thank you. Before I go to Kate, now that Kevin's just moved his head, I noticed Sarah has got her hand up and also Carmen. So I'll go to Sarah, then Carmen, then Kate.
Thank you. I don't want to delay or take us backwards, but I just did want to give you an extra piece of information in regards to Councillor Forbes's question around Jobs for Nature. So just so you know, just in recent weeks, I've been asked to be the sector lead. I'm the sector chief executive for Jobs for Nature. So that means that, in terms of how that program is rolled out and the work that is done with government around what is appropriate for funding, that I'm involved in that as well. I'd also say too that I absolutely agree. It's a very important part of the projects that we're doing, thinking about what happens after the funding runs out. And Andrea is exactly right. When we had our meeting with iwi on Te Hakapupu this week, or last week, we particularly covered that. So we will make sure that that's built into the terms of reference for the projects that we have a responsibility for. I also think it's important that we do these projects well and that we administer funds well. And so, that means that the success we've had with our shovel ready projects and the funding we received from them, I know Gavin and his team are looked upon as exemplars in their delivery. And also when we find problems, it's important that we put transparency on them so that we don't risk our eligibility for funding in the future.
Thanks very much, Sarah. Carmen.
Thank you, Chair. Doing a good job. Ms Howard, it's a lot of money and we're really delightful, 1.5 million to help eradicate, contain versus eradication of the wallabies. Good to see now the new signs are in Otago colours. That'll keep Councillor Malcolm happy. And I understand too from the conversation I had with you yesterday, there has also been hair, teeth and nail samples been taken as well. Am I correct, for some analysis?
Yes, through the chair. So that's covered in point 109, the isotope analysis that was working with the University of Otago and the anatomy department and a student over the summer period. So analysing the jaws and other parts of 4 wallabies to determine the geology in which the and teeth enamel. So basically the original origin of the wallaby. So we're just working through finalising that data now. But I think there's a mix of the relatively small sample that we had of origins being from Canterbury, but also Otago. And my understanding is that the Ministry for Primary Industries is looking to pick up the work that we had partnered with the University of Otago and continue that at a national level, which is fantastic.
That's great. It would be good, wouldn't it? Because I mean, the most concerning thing, Miss Howard, about a wallaby, it's its gestation, to have a wallet, to have a joey in its pouch and you still be pregnant with another one, isn't it? And things like that. Thank you on that. Can I just be a pain, Chair Noon? Wallabies is such a good subject, but am I allowed to ask another couple of questions? I'm not trying to hijack it, but are we allowed to go to rabbits, or do you want to just finish the wallabies and then we'll go over to rabbits? So when
No, you just go with your questions.
Are you sure?
Next couple of questions, please.
Okay, thank you. So, Ms. Howard, I'm just looking at the rabbits and how we're all going. 109 rural inspections. We focus on the community. So we've got 42 non and 67 compliance. Now that first notice of direction, how are you finding it from people that are receiving their notices from either property owners, the Crown or whoever? Is there good cooperation and understanding of what's expected of them, please?
Through the Chair, yes, we're just starting that process. So we've only issued a couple so far, and there'll be potentially about another 40 that are eligible in the next couple of months. So it's early days, but people do understand, and particularly more so rural properties, their obligations. So generally we've found that once we I guess showing up and doing our part of the equation, that that people are compliant, but time will tell.
You think too, Ms. Howard, that the education key is actually getting out there? We certainly saw probably Councillor Malcolm and yourself even at Moraki, where we had that whole, well, I'm not doing anything till the Crown does something about, rah. And I think that is now changed, hasn't it? You've got good conversations going on with the bigger neighbours.
Yep, through the Chair. So the problem doesn't become any less complex, but we are working with all of the various parties to clarify the rules, the roles and the responsibilities. We've seen progress. Have we sorted the world's problems out? No, and we probably never will, but we have tangible examples of government agencies committing and to spend tens of thousands of dollars on fencing. We have public agencies that are working with private landowners to share costs in those long-term control solutions. Each community is different, and the rural versus the semi-rural are a whole different kettle of fish in terms of the approach that we take. But what we're doing is the difficult part, which is joining all of the dots. And so far, it's, I think, going as well as it could have under the circumstances of the complexity of the problem. It's a human problem, not a pest problem per se that we're trying to solve.
Thank you. And Chair Noon, I just have two further questions, if I may.
Certainly.
Thank you. One is on to Hakapupu, a Pleasant River project. Lovely to see the East Otago Catchment Group and Councillor Malcolm, their involvement. I'm delighted to see that. Is there anything you just want to add to that, Ms. Howard, before I just have my final question to you, please?
Through the Chair, so it's very important that we work with the community to deliver this project so that it meets their needs. We're working closely with our iwi partners to achieve and identify and achieve their outcomes. It's a diverse community, so the Catchment Group is part of that. There are other environmental groups and other stakeholders within that community, and we're committed. It's I think about 150 individual properties within that area, so it's quite manageable, and we aim to work with as many of the diverse stakeholders within that area as we can, in addition to our Runaka partners.
Thank you. And before I go, Chair Noon, can we have it in your report, please, that, and through probably Ms Howard and our CEO, Mrs Gardner, that we congratulate Bruce Moynihan on a very long career with the OIC. I think he started in the late 70s and I was only born in the 70s, so wow, it's a real achievement. His knowledge is so invaluable. He has got such a nice rapport with people, and it's always been such a pleasure to be in company, but to listen to him as he talks about our land and our catchment and our people. And may we wish him a very strong and quiet and peaceful retirement.
Thanks very much, Carmen. We'll pick that up in a moment when we move to the recommendations. I've got Kate, then Michael Laws, Gary, Gretchen, Hillary.
Oh God, I've just lost my agenda. Do you want to go to someone else and I'll come back because mine's just jumped off it.
Michael Laws.
Hi, it's Michael Laws here. I'm page 556, 557, the rabbit management issue. The team have undertaken over 6.5 month period, 109 properties. Where were those properties as a breakdown of the rabbit inspections, please? I've got other questions, but just to get some ideas straight away. And I guess the next question would be, you've got a map that shows the ones that are within the McLean scale and those that are not. But if you had a breakdown of the ones that are not, where are they more likely to be?
So for your questions, first question through the chair, sorry, we've been undertaking property. I haven't got all the details right at hand. I can find a map and circulate that. So we've been taking the rural property inspections in Central Otago, South Otago, Upper Lakes, so spread out across the region, and some in North Otago.
Dunedin?
Yes.
Dunedin as well?
Yep.
Otago? Yeah, okay.
Yep. Out on the Waihola and on the Taieri. We've been focused putting our resources on the other 500 or so inspections and since the start of the financial year on the community projects. So that will lessen, and we'll be able to expand the more rural inspections now that we've finished the community projects. And sorry, could you repeat your second question?
Well, it doesn't matter. No, that's fine. You've answered it. I guess the question was, where of the non-compliant sections are we getting of the region? Which area has the most non-compliant sections as a percentage? Because at the moment it's 38.5% are non-compliant, but you've probably identified hotspots of where there are more than others, or are they uniform?
Through the chair, because we haven't been able to survey everything, it's not statistically significant in terms of being able to, or robust enough to be able to determine if there are more specific areas. In all of the areas that we've been to, there are properties that are compliant and non-compliant. So I think there's examples of good behaviour and practices and non-compliance everywhere.
Since I've been elected to this council, I have from day one asked if we have a methodology, or at least complained about not having a methodology, to determine our success in combating the #1 pest in Otago. Has any progress? Now, I've noticed this report, that's fine. It's a sort of a what we've done, what we're doing report. But have we made any progress in identifying a methodology to determine a measurement of our success or otherwise in combating the #1 pest in Otago?
Through the chair, so yes, we're not fully there yet. So our policy objective is sustained control. So that's reducing the impact, basically. We've developed within the team and the technology that maps all of our work. So that's having that sort of density of spread will allow us to determine if we've met our policy objective of sustained control. We're doing other things like reviewing our night count routes and the frequency of which we do that, and also those locations. So that work's going on. We've also identified a bunch of research questions looking at the impact of our work and the progress towards achieving the regional pest management plan objectives. That's currently sitting with Manaki Whenua and us. It's quite a substantial cost to do all of that work. So we're just looking at the cost benefit analysis of that and how we work that into budgets, and that balance of an academic exercise versus something that provides us with real world information to inform our operational activities. So I'm probably missing a few, but they're some of the tangible changes that we've made in the last 12 months.
So but as an elected member, when will I see a report around this table that tells me whether or not the Otago Regional Council is has an effective pest management policy for rabbits, and B, has some measurement that is credible?
Through the chair, we can do that this year. So what we've been doing is collating the historical data, and while we are not, was before my time in terms of the accuracy of that, but for example, that longitudinal data shows that rabbit numbers were much more prolific in the 1990s. So we can present some of those longitudinal trends. There are lots of things that are out of my control, like climate change and those sort of factors, but we've got a whole range of data that we can show that will point to some trends, and we can also present the information that we do have available.
But okay, I'm sorry, I'm going to be a little bit insistent on this. You haven't answered the question, with all due respect. When will I see around this table a methodology that is credible, that determines whether or not the Otago Regional Council's pest management policies with consideration of rabbits are effective? Now, longitudinal study and something that happened in the 1990s is sort of irrelevant. We've had this pest management policy or strategy now for, what, 4 or 5 years?
In 2019, it was adopted.
2019, it was updated, but we still don't have an ability to be able to say that what we're doing makes a blind bit of difference on the ground. And that's the bit that I'm going to push back on, because I've only been asking for it since I got elected in 2016.
Through the chair, I can provide an update on the cost of that. I'd expect it to be in the millions of dollars based on the information that we've gained from the discussions with Manaki Whenua, but I'm more than happy to firm that up a bit more and present it back to you.
Why will it cost millions of dollars?
Through the chair, in order to design and develop a program of analysis of a pest that moves, it has to be pretty comprehensive. So that's just the advice that we've got from, and it's complex in terms of the sampling methods and all of those sorts of things, but definitely happy to come back to you with that.
So let me get this right. We actually have to invest millions of dollars to be able to find out if everything that you and your team are doing is effective or not. Is that how I understand that reply?
Through the chair, it depends on what you're looking for in terms of the success metric. It's not necessarily defined in the regional pest management plan. There are simple things that you can do, and there are complex methodological interventions that you can implement to show change.
Can I just take the conversation a slightly different direction? Andrea, on an annual basis, we have a reporting mechanism basically reflecting on the previous 12 months and how successful our operational plan was. And I think it goes to the Minister of Biosecurity, I think. So that is a mechanism that shows either whether we're meeting our targets or not. Is that a fair comment?
Through the chair, our annual operational plan sets a number of key performance indicators, and we then, as we did earlier this year, present council our performance against those. It's slightly different to what Councillor Laws is asking for, though.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
I found my page again.
Oh, sorry, Kate.
Thank you. The catchment action planning on page 545. We had an absolutely outstanding workshop with Anna in December. We keep on getting good stuff, although we changed the name of it from catchment action planning from integrated catchment management. I'm not sure why, but what I'm not sure is a whole lot of really busy people out on the ground who may not know that this stuff is happening here, and or how would they know that our planning is going ahead and we've got a framework that we're developing. I appreciate you talk about talking to some of the catchment groups, but I'm not sure that there's a joined up thinking, or there's people going out looking for the GIS stuff, not knowing that you're doing it, for example. How is your communication going out on the field and making sure that we're all working together on this?
Through the chair, so just in terms of terminology, integrated catchment management is the principles and catchment action plan is the delivery arm of those principles. So that's the terminology difference. My understanding is that we will be coming back to you on the 8th of June with a confirmed framework. And that's the point in which we would then have the mandate to engage further with all of the communities that we're going to work with, and we would be presenting an approach to do so. So until we have that high level endorsement and agreement of the direction and the sequencing of delivery, we wouldn't aim to have in-depth conversations with stakeholders.
I just think there's an opportunity possibly being missed there with some groups going off and doing their own thing, not knowing that the ORC are wanting to partner on that, and equally sitting in on a meeting the other day, just hearing of different groups going off and doing different parts of monitoring, not together, which is duplication and or crossing over and not necessarily getting the best result. And it's not that I want to say you won't have the whole framework. It's just letting people know that what the process you're going through. It's fine that we know it around the table. I don't know that you want us going and talking to the catchment groups and telling them it's much better going directly. And it's just informing them of that, because I don't think they understand the GIS stuff, which I'm really excited about, is maybe going to be much more available to them soon.
Through the chair, so we are aware of and are supporting at least a couple of catchment groups, if not more, to develop sub-catchment plans. And so Anna will be involved in that. And so we'll support those catchment groups to where they want to develop a sub-catchment plan that aligns with our thinking in that overall sense. So there will be some coordination there, and our catchment advisors are all fully aware of the broader work going on and aligning that as well. We're not over everything, but there's definitely we can't stop progress while we kind of wait for the overall approach to be endorsed and implemented. So we are making sure that there is alignment between the everyday work that will continue and should continue up until the point in which we have our overall framework ready to be implemented.
I think my last question.
Sorry, last question. When you're deploying staff, are you going to do it by catchment or by area? As in, and I know that this one raised about one of the rivers I was looking at, it was going to have the lower reach, I think, done by Dunedin office maybe, and the upper reach from the Alexandra office. I'm not quite sure. I'm just wondering if you've made that decision yet, and how that's, or is that still something up in the air?
Through the chair, so the environmental implementation team has organised itself by freshwater management unit area by geography, and we've also in some areas split ourselves between Dunedin and coastal. So we do not have a full complement of staff until year 3 of the LTP. And when we do, we'll have at least two on the ground staff for each FMU area. In the meantime, we're working on a hybrid model as we transition to that. So, and that aligns with our catchment action plan framework as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gary.
Thank you. I think Councillor Laws has covered off the concerns I had around rabbits, but the other one I had was just on wallabies. And I think we do have good recognition across the region now about the concern for wallabies. The signs are helping. The messages that we have out there are good. I think there are the landowners, the contractors, those out and about do recognise the issue with wallabies. Where I think we have some issues is around some potential resistance to report them because of what it then brings for the ORC to then enter their property. So I am hearing of 1 or 2 instances where sightings have been seen in areas that we actually are far further afield than we have thought to date. So, but my understanding is that those landowners are dealing to what they see anyway. One thing we could do, we're coming up to autumn muster, a bit of a emphasis on the topic again. You'll have the entire hill covered over autumn muster, so it's a good opportunity to just ask everyone to keep an eye out again, keep a gun in the truck, deal to it if you see it, and hopefully report it. That was all. Thank you.
Thank you. No doubt you've taken on board those thoughts, Andrea.
Through the chair, yep, we encourage people to contact us, and if they don't want to do that, their choice. They'll understand the consequences from an economic perspective, and we've got contractors available to assist if they require assistance.
Thank you. Gretchen, then Hilary, sorry.
Thanks. I think Kate asked my other question, but coming back to Councillor Laws's question about when will we have a statistically robust monitoring program that can tell us at any one time how we're going with rabbit compliance across Otago? And your answer, I think, there, I'm just trying to understand this, is that actually that's a really big ask, and that would be millions of dollars to achieve, given I think that we've got real patchiness and diversity right across Otago. I also drew from a further question someone asked in terms of compliance. Some people are good, some people are not. And I guess I thought your honesty there in that answer was really good. I think it's a similar question to saying, when will we know with a statistically robust monitoring program whether we're complying with stormwater discharges across Otago? It's kind of similar. Will we know at any one time what each individual house is doing, etc.? No. Will we know whether, similar thing, smoke coming from individual houses is complying for air quality across Otago? No, we probably won't. So I'm just trying to understand. Your response is, actually, we're probably never going to have that. So we understand that. But what we are going to do is have a sensible compliance regime which does monitor and target priorities. And that's, yeah, that you have got some strategy around that. But actually, we're not going to know at any one time exactly how we're going.
Through the chair, thank you for allowing me to further think about my answer. So we do have some established mechanisms to show change over time, and they are our night count routes. We're making sure they are as robust as possible and are extending those. So that is a tangible way in which we can look at change in particular geographic areas, but we don't cover absolutely every property in Otago, and it wouldn't ever be feasible to do so. I'm frequently asked how many rabbits I've killed, and what we don't count is the rabbits. We can count and see the rabbits that are there, but nobody's counting the rabbits that have been killed. So, and that's probably not practical. So we've got that now night count, and we've also got the compliance and progression of increased compliance. It's going to take a few years of recalibration as we improve our compliance plan, and we are able to get across the whole region. So we will be able to pick up trends in the next couple of years as a result of our increased focus on compliance. But there are no quick fixes, but there are some things that we already do that will provide us with some valuable information.
Thanks, Gretchen. Thanks, Andrea. Hilary.
first a wee question, and that's about the mite that hangs around and kills, I presume, old man's beard. Is that something that is a, like people weren't allowed to bring calicivirus in? Does it have to be agreed to that it can come in? I mean, obviously, if Landcare research or whatever has given it to us, it's kosher, but I'm just saying, is it a licensed sort of a regulated mite?
Through the chair, yes, I'm not an expert on biological control, but all of those biocontrol, sorry, all of those organisms will need approval at a national level if they don't already exist in New Zealand. Otherwise, they would just be, I guess, recirculated where they wouldn't travel naturally. So it's all entirely approved and endorsed and adopted by other councils and biosecurity entities across the country.
I can help if you like. Used to be part of my job.
Sarah.
Yeah, so under the Hazardous Substances and New Organisms Act, what happens is those mites or any kind of proposed biological control comes into New Zealand, spends a long time in containment where they do a range of testing to make sure that it actually is just going to target old man's beard and not eat anything else or disease anything else that we might be concerned about. And it's only after a significant amount of time under testing conditions in a high level of containment that they're able to be released. We've been doing biological control in New Zealand for a long time. One of the ones that you may not be aware of is that back in around the 50s, St. John's wort used to be a huge problem in New Zealand, was really affecting the agricultural sector. And we brought a biological control in to deal with that, and it's not really a weed that we talk about so much anymore. So it can be a very successful way of doing things.
Thanks, Sarah.
Excellent, thank you. And the other question I had was following on from Councillor Law's question. If we have a policy of sustained control rather than elimination, was that the description? Rather than elimination, we must, to make sense of that, don't we have to have some idea of how many we've got now, and then in 2 years' time how many we've got, because how would we otherwise know whether we had controlled them? I mean, I presume that means sustained control means keep them at a certain level or under a certain level, or, and I presume, like you might say, McLean scale under that amount for so much of the, I don't know what it means, but assuming it means something that is don't let it increase or decrease them or something in a controlled fashion, don't we have to know vaguely how many there is now and vaguely how many there is in 2 years' time to see whether we are actually sustainably controlling them?
Through the chair, yes, we do. And there are hopefully new technologies like night thermal imaging and drones that we can use that cover that ground much more efficiently than a person undertaking 2,000 property inspections. So, it's a difficult task. Is it desirable that we have a tool that is able to provide us with that information? Yes. It's not something that's readily available, but it is possible, and that's definitely something that we'll be putting further thought into so that we can provide that level of, as much level of certainty as possible that we're meeting our RPMP objectives.
Thank you, because what I was wanting to do was connect what we say as our policy or our plan with what we measure. Because if the measurements don't fit with our plan, then we're not measuring what we say we're doing, so we're not knowing whether we're achieving it, sort of. And although we can have measurements that are really helpful to say we've had 5 management area groups we're working with over the next year or things like that, which is a sort of we hope, a movement towards our goal, unless there's a really direct connection between what we're measuring and what we're saying we're doing, then we're sort of missing something. So I'd just sort of, I guess I'd like people to think about whether the measurements and what we're aiming for are as well connected there as they might be.
Thank you. I'm
Gavin's
going to
got
go
his
to
hand up.
I'm going to go to Gavin. Gavin, did you want to just wrap this particular focus for the committee up?
Yes, if I understand Councillor Law's question, and I think Councillor Calvert's comments were very helpful. I think I understand it to be perhaps not so much about measuring state, but how will we measure policy effectiveness? How are we going to do that? So if I've got that right, then we can come back to you on how we intend doing that when it comes to peace plan review and what are the systems we have in place now to enable that to happen.
Excellent. Yep.
There's a lot of nodding of heads and thumbs up. Thank you very much, Gavin. Thank you, Andrea. Michael Decker.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. The Lake Hayes monitoring boy, Andrea, or Gavin or anybody, but what are we learning from it?
Through the chair, Gavin, can you answer that?
Thank you, Ms. Howard.
Yeah, have this hospital.
Very good.
Look, through you, Mr. Chair, we'll have to we deliver stuff, we don't measure it. We'll come back to you on that. It's more of a science question, a very good question. I don't have that information at hand at the moment, but I do know it's proving to be very valuable, and it will certainly be a very valuable tool for measuring the effectiveness of our interventions that are being implemented at the moment.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Gavin. So I'm just wondering, Carmen, are you happy to move the recommendations 1 and 2 with a 3 that council express our grateful thanks to Bruce Monaghan for his long service to the Otago Regional Council and wish him well in his retirement?
Absolutely delighted to. Thank you for asking.
Okay, seconded by.
No, I've got a second policy.
Seconded by Kate. So speaking to the motion.
No, I want to move another motion on top of that.
Well, okay, so does it relate to 1, 2, and 3?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's an amendment?
No. It's a 4th, but it's related to.
Okay, right. Well, tell us what it is, and then.
Thank you. Well, I'd just like us to develop a credible methodology to measure the effectiveness of our pest management policy with regards to combating the #1 pest in Otago.
Okay.
And that picks up on what Gavin does, but also Gavin said that so it's an effectiveness tool that we need to be developing.
Does that mean we're putting $1 million up?
No, it doesn't mean that. We're developing a credible methodology. Then it would come back as to what that methodology might look like. And then it would perhaps go forward to the annual plan.
Oh, it just covers what Andrea had said that she would do in returning back to us.
Okay, so I'm just trying to think now. Carmen, are you happy with that additional motion?
I certainly are, and I commend it too. Thank you, Councillor Knowles, through the chair.
And Kate, you second, you're happy with that? And did you put a time frame on that?
No, but I'm expecting that all will come to us for the draft annual plan.
Okay. Now just check, Gavin, that's you understand what is being promoted in terms of the motion?
Yes, I do. I'm just wondering about the ability to deliver that. I'd just like Ms. Howard to comment on that because she's been doing some work, I think, in terms of scoping, rough order, what such a thing might be. But what I'm hearing is we're now being directed to firm up something to the point where it then could be included into an annual plan. That is a piece of work, and I'd just like her to comment on whether that's actually achievable given current resources.
So, thank you. Andrea?
Through the chair, yes, we would need external advice because it's in terms of that methodology. So as I already said, I've got a whole list that I've been engaging with Manaki Whenua on. So it's broadly within that same remit. So providing that they can get back to us with a bit more detail, that should be fine.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. So everyone's comfortable? So you're happy that I put the 4 motions all together? Okay, all those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you very much. Thank you, Andrea. You've been in the stand for a while, so well done. No, we appreciate your time. Thank you. Thank you, Gavin. Thank you, Sarah. That concludes the public part of this meeting. I'll move that we move into public excluded, seconded by Kate. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against?